Morning, everybody. My name is Chris Molinari. I'm the programming officer here at the Columbia Global Center in Santiago. Thank you for joining us. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming two of the Columbia Global Center's research travel grants, which is the part of the second cohort of the grantees that we have sent to research stations belonging to Universidad Católica. The two Columbia grad students that are with us today are going to share their perspectives of their time in their research in Villarrica, Chile, at Universidad Católica's Center for Local Development, also known as CEDEL, which is located in Villarrica in the center south of Chile. Today, we will be joined by the two grad students, Olivia Cull, who is studying for her master's in public health from Columbia's Mailman School of Public Health. And she will discuss effective mental health programs that have been tailored to local school communities in southern Chile. That will go until about 11 o'clock. And then she will be followed by Mikayla Cheng, who is pursuing a Master of International Affairs at Columbia School of International and Public Affairs. And she'll be discussing the impact of tourism on communities and economic development for the indigenous population. To begin this webinar today, I will give the screen to Antonio Campaña. He will have a few words. Antonio is the director of the Columbia Global Center here in Santiago. So welcome, Antonio, and the screen is yours.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning. My name is Antonio Campaña. I'm the director of the Columbia Global Center in Santiago, and I work alongside my colleagues, Chris Molinari and Vivian Fosk. The Columbia Global Center in Santiago is one of the 11 centers around the world that act as Columbia University's physical and intellectual gateway globally. The Santiago Center is dedicated to sharing Columbia's excellent scholarship, expertise, and resources to tackle global challenges and promote intellectual discussions worldwide. Over the years, the Santiago Center has become an intellectual bridge connecting academic communities. It promotes knowledge sharing and supports research projects on key global and local public policy issues, including climate change, mining, journalism, humanities, global health, and education. The Santiago Center has organized over 300 public events in the past 5 years to tackle emerging issues and challenges through a multidisciplinary approach. It has also supported research projects focused on critical public issues in science, culture, the arts, education, and public health. The center's efforts have significantly enhanced knowledge and public discourse in the region while fostering collaboration between Colombia and Chile. The Santiago Center offers a unique opportunity for Columbia University graduate students to conduct fieldwork in Chile. As part of the MOU that we signed with the Universidad Católica, the center supports graduate students through its grant program, offering funding for travel, fees, and living expenses to research diverse ecosystems and essential issues at one of Católica's field stations. Mikayla and Olivia completed their residency at the Local Development, Education, and Interculturality Center in Villarrica, which offers interdisciplinary research opportunities focused on developing the South Central region of Chile, particularly in relation to the sustainability of social ecological systems, sustainable tourism, territorial planning, and education for sustainability. Olivia's interests focus on evaluating the effectiveness of integrating mental health and psychosocial support and livelihood interventions in humanitarian settings. Her work at the Local Development Education Center focus on school-based mental health approaches, drawing on experiences such as developing a school-based program on social media use. She combined the arts, creativity, and qualitative research to address adolescent mental health projects. Overall, she's committed to advancing trauma-informed, culturally responsive, and community-driven mental health initiatives. Mikayla's goal was to study the development challenges of South Central Chile, particularly how tourism affects local economies and inequalities. With a background in urban social policy and experience researching communities in the US, Southeast Asia, and Africa, she's especially interested in how public-private partnerships and tourism can be designed to support the sustainability of local communities. She highlights the risks of economic reliance on tourism and the inequalities it can cause, such as families choosing short-term tourist income over long-term education. Her research examined the impact of tourism revenue on local communities and explored ways to create systems that reinvest in education, healthcare, and innovation. She also emphasized strategies to support communities during tourism off-seasons and ensure fair distribution of tourism benefits in Chile. The center is honored and has been a privilege to host Olivia and Mikayla. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antonio. Next up, we will hear from Sergio Guitar. Sergio is Universidad Católica's executive coordinator of the network of regional centers and stations throughout Chile, and he is going to talk briefly about the work being done at these centers. Sergio, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, at UC Chile, or for Universidad Católica, we have been fostering this network of research centers and field stations from the north of our country to the south, very south. These are field stations or centers, as the one in Villarrica, where we have nurtured a tradition of interacting with a specific natural area and a natural and a specific culture as well. In the north, we are in the desert, the most arid desert in the world, and we're fostering fog. I mean, catching fog for different uses, and from that also collaborating with different areas of research for a more interdisciplinary approach, right? Of how all the areas of the university can contribute to sustainable development in the area. In the river mouth of Loa, we have a specific interest on archaeology. There's communities that gathered there 3,000 to 5,000 years before the present, where everybody was nomads. And because of the conditions of the desert, we have perfect conservation. So it's also a very interesting area to learn from the past, to also design the future and live in harmony with these specific areas. In our central coast, we have our research station focused on coastal sustainability and marine research. That's the longest presence we've had in the territory. It's 42 years old, and it's a long tradition of working and developing new marine biologists from UC Chile, and a long history of collaborations around the world because of the relevance of joining ecological perspectives and also social interactions and how we influence, right, the sustainability of these ecosystems, we as people. CEDEL, you will learn more today from Olivia and Mikayla and Alfredo and Andrés, so I will skip that one. And in Patagonia, we have another field station of UC Chile where we're studying how the effects on, for example, tourism change completely a very pristine area from a global change perspective, from the speculations on the use of land, on how small communities are stressed by a huge population that comes for only summer events, right? And all the interactions from geographical, environmental, and cultural to do long-term research, which means to measure variables in a long term. And we also have partners. This network has gathered different partners whom we share interest with and scopes, right? So in Chiloé Island, we have partnered with Senda Darwin, which is a field station that's been working a lot in forest ecology in an area where there's no mountains. So the forest is our reservoir of water. So it's a very tight interaction that it needs to be cultivated there. Also in Chiloé, recently we started collaborating with a private foundation that has a really big park 120,000 hectares of land, which is huge. It's like a third of the island. And they have a lot of interest on conservation and how Católica can contribute to that with more research in the area. In Punta Arenas, in the very south also of Chile, there's a research center where we have been working with Universidad de Magallanes for biomedicine purposes. So all the extracts of plants, algae, and fungi are maybe future active principles for medicines to treat Alzheimer's, Parkinson, or other degenerative diseases. And we have also the last one to join our network is in Puerto Williams, Omora Park, which is another offer, right, for this program where students can come and collaborate in biocultural conservation and all the aspects that could be developed from the very most southern land, right, in the world. So that's just a brief overlook of what we have to offer. These are all places that have been pioneered by researchers that have seen a potential of working very tightly in the territory. And from our network, we have been working more in how to bring university level education to these areas. We know that these are natural laboratories for research, but we also want these to be for instruction purposes. There's a lot that you learn when you are in the field doing research or learning, right, new abilities. And there's also a very strong directive on public service. All these areas interact with communities, interact with natural environments, and they all have a very important responsibility on how to give back and to contribute to these territories in their development. So that would be just a brief introduction, and hope this webinar goes very well.
Thank you very much, Sergio, and thank you for going over the different stations in this very robust network that Católica has. I appreciate that. Next up, we will be hearing from Alfredo Gaete. Alfredo is a researcher and a professor at CEDEL UC in Villarrica. And for the past 3 months, he has worked as a mentor with Olivia. Alfredo will be giving a very short introduction to Olivia's research topic. Alfredo has been very gracious in joining us today because he's feeling a bit under the weather. He's a bit sick. So he's going to limit his words to a short presentation, but we thank him for joining us. Alfredo, the screen is yours.
Muchas gracias, Chris. Nada, solo muy brevemente para agradecer la posibilidad de participar en esta experiencia. El trabajo de Olivia acá en Villarrica fue excelente. Fue muy bonito contar con ella acá. Perdón. Y bueno, ella les va a dar más detalles de lo que estuvimos trabajando, pero el tema en el que más colaboró, ella se integró como ayudante de investigación de un proyecto financiado por Senadis, que es un proyecto sobre salud pública, que era uno de los temas que ella quería trabajar. En particular, una investigación en la cual estamos tratando de comprender cuáles son las principales barreras al acceso a la educación y a los servicios de salud que enfrentan los niños diagnosticados con autismo aquí en la zona. Eso también me colaboró en otras cosas, pero ella lo va a explicar mejor, yo creo. Discúlpenme que yo estoy un poquito mal para hablar. Fue un gusto tenerla con nosotros en todo caso.
Thank you so much, Alfredo, and we wish you a speedy recovery. Thank you for joining us today. Next up, we will have a presentation by Olivia Cull. Olivia, as has been mentioned, is obtaining her master's in public health from Columbia's Mailman School of Public Health. And I understand that Olivia will be doing her presentation in Spanish. Olivia, the screen is all yours.
Hola a todos, voy a mostrar mi pantalla ahorita. Para empezar, estoy empezando acá. Para asegurar, ¿puede ver solo mi pantalla de presentación y no mis notas? Ok, perfecto.
Sí, todo bien.
Gracias. Entonces, muchas gracias a todos para venir. Y disculpa porque mi español no es perfecta, pero voy a intentar porque yo pasé la mayoría de mi tiempo en Chile hablando español. Muchísimas gracias a todos. Voy a primero hacer un resumen. Voy a hablar sobre el proyecto Barreras que mencionó Alfredo y después voy a hablar más sobre mis otras investigaciones, incluyendo un artículo que escribió Alfredo sobre la educación inclusiva. Y también yo tenía muchas experiencias fuera de mis investigaciones, entonces voy a hablar sobre esto también. Primero, necesito dar todo el gracias para mi experiencia a esta gente acá. Muchas son acá en nuestra presentación, pero también las que no están acá son Consuelo y Javiera. Fue mis compañeras en Villarrica, como Javiera fue mi anfitriona, Consuelo fue mi como compañera de estudiante. Y muchísimas gracias a todos para asegurar que podía tener una experiencia muy, muy inolvidable. Entonces, primero, sobre la investigación de Proyecto Barreras. ¿Cuál es el autismo? Vamos a ver que el 1.33% de jóvenes entre 6 y 18 años en escuelas de Chile tienen diagnóstico de TEA, que es como un grupo de condiciones neurológicos que están definidos sobre como algo social. Es como, sí, lo más sobre el autismo es social. Entonces es una pregunta sobre esto y aprendí mucho sobre las experiencias de chicos en escuela en la tema social. Pero detectando y diagnosticando el TEA temprano puede ayudar a tener mejores resultados para la salud y bienestar de la vida de los chicos con TEA y su comunidad. Todavía la mayoría de los jóvenes reciben el diagnóstico después de los 5 o 6 años, que peora porque es mejor para su vida hacerlo más temprano por las investigaciones que lo han investigado. Pero la ley 2154, perdón, la ley 21545, que es el TEA, dice que se debe resguardar la inclusión social de niños, niñas, adolescentes y adultos con TEA. Y es muy importante que esta ley se como expande y por eso este programa ayuda para asegurar que hay programas que son realidades en vez de solo un político. Y claro que todavía hay brechas en cómo se aplica el ley y entonces este programa es sobre esto. Los investigadores están realizando un estudio de caso cualitativo y su pregunta principal es ¿cuáles son las barreras que experimentan los cuidadores de niñas y niños preescolares con autismo cuando acceden a la salud y la educación en relación con sus hijos? Y las preguntas secundarias son, ¿cuáles son las percepciones de los cuidadores sobre estas experiencias? ¿Y qué experiencias vividas caracterizan estos procesos? Y puedes ver que hay 4 grupos. Hay cuidadores en que había entrevistas individuales, niños, educadores y profesionales de la salud. En mi trabajo yo ayudé con el primer grupo de los padres, los cuidadores y las investigaciones como los las entrevistas individuales. Y usamos un código de análisis cualitativo que incluso incluyó diagnóstico de autismo, factores contextuales, factores individuales, económicos y familiares. Para mí fue muy, muy interesante oír sobre las experiencias de los padres, porque es que su vida cambia mucho cuando depende en su experiencia. Si tiene el apoyo de los médicos y los educadores, es mucho mejor que si no. Y había un rango muy grande entre sus experiencias y a veces fue triste para pensar en cómo los educadores a veces discriminan en contra de los chicos con TEA, y creo que este tema es muy, muy importante para arreglar. Además, yo trabajé con una mujer que está haciendo su doctorado en un tema similar, y para esta yo leí mucho sobre las percepciones de los cuidadores sobre barreras y facilitadores para el acceso, como yo estaba hablando antes. Pero fue artículos de alrededor del mundo, incluso Corea, Palestina, Canadá. Entonces, las experiencias de padres en todo el mundo. Y por eso creo que yo sé mucho más sobre el tema de barreras para la educación para los chicos con TEA. Okay. Voy a conseguir hacerlo en los Estados Unidos también, espero. Pero resultados. El estudio todavía se encuentra en la etapa de recolección de datos, pero se espera que este proyecto de investigación, cuando termina, proporcione recomendaciones útiles para las personas interesadas en los campos de salud y educación, así como para los profesionales que trabajan directamente con la población del estudio. Y la investigación ahora sugiere que habrá un contraste entre las percepciones de los cuidadores y la de los educadores y de profesionales de salud respecto a las barreras. Okay. Estoy emocionada para ver qué ocurre en el resto de los análisis. Sí. Para continuar, yo también trabajé con Alfredo con su trabajo sobre educación inclusiva. Entonces voy a explicar un poquito sobre su tema, y porque es muy interesante esto, también es muy filosófico, que puede ver Aristóteles y Eudaimonia. Pero según Alfredo y según la literatura de las teóricos, la gente que estudia la filosofía de educación, ellos dicen que hay 4 valores de la educación que son más profundos: el económico, el ético, el político y el antropológico. Y según este artículo, es que lo económico ha subido demasiado, creo, porque es que la educación parece como una máquina más capitalista en vez de una manera para asegurar como fortalecer la felicidad y para encontrar su identidad. Entonces, creo que es muy importante para tener los 4 valores para, como especialmente la creatividad en la escuela, porque muchas veces es como cuando los chicos son como 10 o incluso menos, su habilidad jugar en la escuela se para y es más como necesita hacer los exámenes para tener los trabajos, o siempre hay más para avanzar a algún lado de éxito que es muy fijo. Entonces, tengo mucho para aprender. Entonces, perdona, Alfredo, si estoy explicándolo mal, pero es lo que aprendí. Entonces, sí, fue bastante interesante para aprender. Okay. Entonces, mis experiencias fuera de las investigaciones también fue muy importante para mí. Entonces voy a mostrar un poquito, pero no es tan como profesional de los otros. Entonces, vamos a ver. Ahí fui, sí. Ahí. Entonces, porque yo quería mucho disfrutar de mis experiencias de la cultura de Villarrica y de Chile, y creo que yo lo hice, porque Villarrica es un lugar que tiene harta cultura, harta artes que me encanta, y por eso, para hacerlo con Alfredo, como con buscando métodos mejores para los chicos con TEA, y además en mi vida personal. Por ejemplo, yo toco la guitarra por el río, hice clases de baile en el centro cultural, hice clases de salsa, también de como talleres, perdón, de las acrobáticas. Y además yo fui a visitar un concierto de Tata Barahona, que es muy, muy increíble, pero fue muy lindo. También tenía la oportunidad de visitar el jardín y hay un programa con una mujer que se llama Claudia, en que la gente en la universidad pueda ayudar con sembrar. Y entonces yo sentí muy cercana con el jardín y la naturaleza durante mi tiempo en Villarrica. Ahí tenía muchísimas oportunidades para hacer trekking y viajar, que fue muy increíble para saber más sobre los temas de Villarrica y Chile en general. Pero puede ver ahí que visité la montaña Villarrica, Valdivia, San Pedro de Atacama, Frutillar, las termas y Puerto Varas. Al final, yo probé muchísima comida nueva y café también. Fue una de mis favoritas cosas para explorar los diferentes tipos de chocolate caliente en la ciudad. Y también yo conocí mucha gente ahí, como en los cafés, y una comida acá arriba es de Irán. Y fue mi primera vez comiendo comida de Irán, entonces fue muy delicioso. Y ahí es mi compañera y amiga Mikayla que va a oír muy pronto. Pero creo que es todo de mi experiencia, pero para mis reflexiones finales, creo que es muy importante promover la educación inclusiva para mejorar la educación para todos. No es importante como su diagnóstico, es que para tener la creatividad y los apoyos en la escuela, ayuda a toda la gente y será una experiencia más maravillosa, más como de comunidad en el aula. Y creo que sí, como estaba diciendo, los juegos y los apoyos visuales benefician el aprendizaje en general. Yo tenía la oportunidad de visitar con algunos maestros con Alfredo para ver juegos como de matemáticas, de gramática, literatura, de madera, que es muy vinculado con las empresas de Villarrica también, porque hay mucha madera. También es importante promover la salud mental y reproductiva para los padres. Yo aprendí esto en escuchar y traducir los entrevistas. Sí. También conectando con la naturaleza, siempre siento mejor. Una bromita, pero me encanta el chocolate caliente, entonces, por favor, aprovecha. No pasa nada donde está, pero sí. Y yo tenía la oportunidad de viajar sola, que fue muy buena para mi crecimiento, no sé, mundial, creo, y podía disfrutar, pensar mucho en la vida. Y también la gente en Villarrica son bastante apoyado y amable. Y claro que sí, voy a visitarlos muy pronto. Entonces, muchísimas gracias a todos para su tiempo hoy. Aquí son mis fuentes y que todos vayan muy bien.
Thank you so much, Olivia. And I really appreciated both the professional side and the personal side of what it's like living in Villarrica. I'm going to have to take you up on your offer and go try the hot chocolate in the south. We are going to open up the webinar now for questions and answers. To do so, you can use the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. And that will be sent to all the panelists here, and we can go off of the questions you have in the button there. So we'll open that up, and just to get started, maybe I can start out with a couple of questions. Olivia, could you talk to us a little bit about more on the personal side again? What would you say would be like a typical day for you in Villarrica?
Yeah, I'll do this in English. A typical day for me would be, I would wake up and I have this wonderful host, Javiera. And so I would have my little breakfast with her and then go on a beautiful walk, which is pretty short to the university. And on my walk, there was the view of the volcano. And so every morning I kind of just remember like, wow, I'm in this incredible place. And then I would go to the university and I had my little office space. There was partly with Alfredo, but then also in the CEDEL building. So I kind of switched back and forth. But it was a very communal office. So I set up and would usually working on interviews, for example, like transcribing the interviews so that someone else on our team could put them into the qualitative software and more easily analyze. And I helped with that analysis process as well. Whatever the task was of the day, I would work on that. And for lunch, I would love to go to my favorite little cafe sometimes, get a nice tostada, or I often brought my lunch from home. And went back to the university, continued my work there. And always are chatting with people, it's very communal. But after that, I would go to my classes after work, for example, yoga and salsa. And then I would go home with Javiera and we would watch a Spanish telenovela and have dinner. So every day I think that was like a standard day, but so many amazing adventures in between.
Fantastic. Thank you. And just to remind everybody for the questions, please enter your questions in the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. Olivia, I have another question for you in the meantime.
Yeah.
You talked a lot about your personal experience. Now I'm going to go more towards the professional side. I know that you have experience in analyzing the effectiveness of the mental health and psychosocial support interventions. You kind of mentioned them a little bit in terms of the world experience of these, but I would like to hear a little bit more about that, of your past experiences and how those compared with what you saw in Villarrica.
Absolutely. That's a great question. So in my past experiences, I was focused more on, I wasn't focused as much on family. For this project, I learned a lot about the role of parents and caregivers. In the past, I've worked on kind of like the programmatic side of working with like promoting partnerships between organizations, right? But having the personal element to it and that like emotional side of the caregivers really watching their children or the youth in their lives deal with these barriers, I think brought out another level of need. Like I realized how important it is to keep the families in the loop and people important in the lives of these kids. in the loop, because often it can feel very siloed between, like, let's say you're going to the doctor and like the parent doesn't really know what's going on and they can't explain and they can't continue the care outside that doctor's office. And so I think it's extremely important to have like consistent communication between all parties. For example, between the educators and the medical providers, between the parents and the kids, between, you know, and I think that has a lot to do with mental health, because mental health really is, the base of it is communication, right? And I think also less about verbal, I learned a lot more about visual communication and creative communication during my time here, because there are a lot of barriers, for example, language barriers or just other comprehension barriers like that come when you're just having verbal communication. So here I learned about how important it is to use multiple tools to promote that knowledge and understanding within kids who have TEA or who are on the autism, who have autism spectrum disorder, and with every child, everyone in general. So yeah, I guess overall, what I will say is that coming out of this experience, I'm going to be promoting inclusive education and creative modes of communication with all populations, knowing that to make products and programs more accessible for all is going to help everyone. And yeah, that's kind of what I came out of this with.
Thank you. It's definitely interesting to bring the local to the global, the glocal, as they say.
Absolutely.
It fits right into there. We have a question from Laura Luna. She says, thank you for your interesting and lovely presentation. On a personal side, did you have the chance to meet and exchange with the other students from the Villarrica campus?
Wonderful question, Laura. I did. Yes, I had such a great time. So for example, my friend Consuelo, who this team very graciously introduced me to, and Mikayla as well. I got to know her, and she is just such a wonderful person. And I got to meet some of her friends as well. So that was really fun because we got to explore the themes of like what she was studying with her primary education studies. I also got to go to a class with Alfredo, which was so fun and really informative. It was about inclusive education. And I also, in the garden, they were all students that were part of that experience. So I was one of a couple people that weren't students that were helping out in the garden. So I got to chat with them about their practica, where they went into like different schools in rural areas to teach, rural areas and in the city. And the rest of my friends were from out of school through my time in the cafes and through the exercise things I did.
Fantastic, thank you. And Laura has a follow-up question on the research side now. Do you feel that you have a different idea of what inclusion is now after this research? I
absolutely do. I think it mostly relates to the modes of communication. Like I can't, every time I meet someone new, I'm going to realize like, okay, everyone has a different mode of, a different ideal way that they want to learn, that they want to converse. And I think it's just a matter of like really getting to know the person, really setting up programs in my public health work through the lens of like every participant, really making sure that it is a partnership constantly, because the people that are designing the programs, if it's not for them, then it's not going to be for anyone really. So inclusion, I think, is about maintaining that level of equity between the people in power and the people who are participating in the program, making sure that it's on an equal playing field.
Okay. Thank you, Olivia. If there's any last questions, please put them into the Q&A. We'll wait just a couple seconds for that. Okay, I don't see any other questions. So thank you so much, Olivia, for sharing your experiences with us. It was a wonderful presentation. I loved hearing about both the research and your personal experiences in Villarrica and throughout Chile, really. And as you know, once you're here, you're always part of the country. So you're welcome back anytime and every time you would like to come here. So thank you so much, Olivia. To begin with the second part of this presentation, I'm going to give the screen over to Andrés Reid. Andrés is a researcher and professor at CEDEL UC, and for the past 3 months, he's been working as a mentor with Mikayla Cheng. He will provide a short introduction to Mikayla's research topic. Andrés, the screen is yours.
Muchas gracias, Chris. Buenos días a todas y todos. Espero que estén todos muy bien. Estoy muy contento de estar en esta conversación con Mikayla, una persona que aprendí a conocer, respetar y querer, así que estoy muy contento de haberla conocido. Es difícil centrar en un solo aspecto el aporte que hizo Mikayla. En un principio colaboró activamente en hacer análisis comparativo de algunos resultados de investigaciones que estábamos haciendo en turismo indígena a partir de una plataforma de recopilación de datos que levantamos el año anterior. Y ella nos ayudó en un principio a poder hacer comparaciones, resultados de esa plataforma con unos estudios que había hecho el Servicio Nacional de Turismo en nuestro país. Eso fue un dato muy interesante para nosotros para mirar algunos aspectos de lo que nosotros estábamos levantando como datos. Nos apoyó también activamente en la búsqueda y comparada de bibliografía actualizada sobre turismo indígena, turismo de intereses especiales, de base comunitaria, turismo rural. Nos entregó un documento que nos nutre mucho las posibilidades de conversar sobre estos temas y reflexionarlos. A su vez, y producto de un trabajo que tenemos bastante estrecho con algunas comunidades, empresarios y organizaciones de turismo indígena, Mikayla, que colaboró también muy activamente con una emprendedora del territorio de Chayupén, Cecilia Cañumán, también colaboró grabando, orientando acerca de registros de conversaciones con autoridades mapuches ancestrales como loncos en el sector de Pucura, relacionada con el huerquén de esa zona, Nicanor Praiguán. Y finalmente también colaboró activamente, ahí está Javier Lefimán, director ejecutivo de la Sociedad de Turismo Mapuche, aprovecho de saludarlo, Mari Peñi. Eh, a partir de esa relación con Javier, Mikayla tuvo la oportunidad de conocer de cerca un conjunto de territorios donde ella pudo colaborar por un lado, pero también tener antecedentes de primera mano y de campo de sus intereses de investigación. Que fueron, como ustedes ya lo dijeron, temas de la inequidad en el turismo, cómo el turismo indígena tiene o no barreras para poder estar a la par con los otros sectores de la industria del turismo. Em, Eso es más o menos lo que ven que son muchas áreas que cubrió Mikayla, y yo quiero también destacar la eficacia, la disponibilidad total de Mikayla. Lo que le pedíamos lo resolvía en un par de días, estaba siempre muy activa y para mí fue un placer trabajar con ella. Así es que muchas gracias, Mikayla, te mando un gran saludo.
Thank you so much, Andres. And thank you also for volunteering to mentor Mikayla. I know it was very special for her. Next up, we'll have Mikayla Cheng, and she is going to be, she's pursuing a Master of International Affairs at Columbia School of International and Public Affairs. She has spent the last 3 months interviewing and researching on tourism in indigenous Mapuche communities, entrepreneurism, and economic development. Mikayla, we're looking very much forward to your presentation. The screen is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. And muchas gracias, Profesor Reid. Fue un gran placer trabajar con usted y estoy muy agradecida por su mentoría durante toda mi experiencia en Villarrica. Muchas gracias. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mikayla, and today, as I start my presentation, I'd like to first thank the Columbia Global staff, Center staff, Dr. Antonio and Chris, Vivi, for the opportunity to conduct research in Chile. I'd also like to thank the staff at La Universidad Católica, including Sergio, Cristian, and Laura. And again, I'd like to thank Professor Reid for his incredible mentorship. I learned so much from Professor Reid, and I'm super happy we met this summer. And finally, I'd like to thank the amazing entrepreneurs I worked with, including Nicanor, Cecilia, Zoila, and Javier, as well as all the entrepreneurs in the Mapuche Tourism Society. So I just wanted to kind of share a few experiences before diving into my research. Here are some photos of my experience. There's a lot that I learned during my time in Villarrica. And for example, one thing I learned is how to navigate the rural bus system. I would say I spent a lot of time doing research and interviewing, but I also spent a lot of time on the bus. So I got really good at navigating all the different buses across the region. And I also was really privileged to see what Mapuche tourism looks like on the ground. I was able to meet with so many different entrepreneurs and see all the different goods and services they offered. And I even had the opportunity to sleep over at some of the cabins and enjoy Mapuche cuisine with the families I've met. Finally, I learned how to play Paline, which is a traditional game in Mapuche culture. You can see in one of the photos on the screen. And I also learned how to speak Spanish here. So those are some of my favorite experiences. And just during the research, I was able to also help engage with the community and help provide some promotional materials for promoting their businesses on social media. So I made some cooking videos. I created a map of hiking trails for some entrepreneurs, and it was just such an incredible experience overall. So now I'm going to get started on my presentation topic, which is exploring the landscape of Mapuche tourism. And today I'll be talking about the current landscape of Mapuche tourism, diving into the trends, the challenges, and the opportunities. So before we talk about Mapuche tourism, it's really important to understand the history of the Mapuche in defending their land and identity. The name Mapuche means people of the earth, which is a very fitting reflection of their important role as stewards of the earth. And to begin in the 1480s, the Mapuche set the foundation for a proud identity of protecting the land by defending themselves against the Inca Empire in the Battle of Maule. And in the 1540s, the Mapuche defended their land from the Spanish in what became the Arauca War. And this war lasted until the Treaty of Quilín. And then in the 1810s, the newly independent Chile sought Mapuche territory as land to be colonized. And this mindset fueled what was called the pacification of Araucanía from 1861 to 1883, which is a series of military campaigns that devastated communities and ended Mapuche political autonomy. And by the 1920s, there were assimilation policies that went further. For example, the law of compulsory primary education banned Mapuzungun, which is the native language of the Mapuche people, in schools. And in the 1990s, there was more general indigenous recognition that arrived with the Indigenous Law of 19.253, and it created institutions like CONADI and legal communities. However, there are still some significant gaps that remain. Today, the Mapuche and other indigenous groups are still not specifically recognized by the Constitution of Chile. And while there are headlines that often focus on tensions between the Mapuche and the non-Mapuche communities in Chile, Mapuche tourism offers a different path, which is more rooted in intercultural dialogue and tourism as a tool for resilience and empowerment. So the research questions that I'm focusing on today are the following. What are the current trends in Mapuche tourism that enable it to serve as a strategy for economic and cultural resilience? Second, what are the most prevalent challenges today in Mapuche tourism? And third, what opportunities can strengthen the success of Mapuche tourism? So I conducted my study in the Araucanía region of Chile. And the Araucanía is one of the best regions, I think, to study these research questions because of the opportunity that tourism represents to the region in terms of economic development and cultural flourishing. So some important characteristics of this region include that 1/3 of the residents are indigenous, mostly of Mapuche descent. And this is the highest concentration of indigenous people in any region of Chile. And around 30% of Araucania's residents live in rural areas. So a lot of the area is is more rural than city-like. And third, the Araucanía has historically ranked as Chile's region with the lowest GDP per capita. And finally, the region is rich in natural landscapes, like volcanic lakes and ancient forests, and touristic hubs like Villarrica, Temuco, or not, maybe not Temuco, but Pucón. And now I'd like to paint the picture of what Mapuche tourism in the region looks like, based on the interviews I conducted. So first, what is Mapuche tourism and what makes it distinct? I'm going to introduce you to some amazing entrepreneurs that I had the privilege of interviewing. The first one is Margot, who is the owner of Rancho Don Agustin. It's a lodging business she named after her son, and it was inspired by her family. And she explains that Mapuche entrepreneurs offer a story for tourists and welcome them not just as a tourist, but as a friend. So there's this more intimate relationship. Jessica in the middle, she is a ceramics artist, and she shares that through her ceramics and storytelling, she hopes to communicate Mapuche culture and transform people's vision and thinking. So here you can kind of see that there's this aspect of informing like people's worldviews and helping them see the world larger than their current worldview. And finally, there's Juan on the right. He's a professional Mapuche chef, also owns a lodging business, and he shares how he incorporates Mapuche native plants into his food and shares culture and stories through that. He engages tourists through creating an environment of curiosity and storytelling as he's serving the food, which is a really special experience. So in general, Mapuche tourism is imbued with culture across many different aspects. And here are some photos that I encountered, or I took, I didn't encounter them. So first, accommodation. There are different types of accommodations like rucas and cabins. Some are more modern and some are more traditional. These are some of the accommodations that I took photos of while visiting some of the entrepreneurs. There are also lots of different arts and crafts. For example, here are some ceramics done by Jessica, as well as some tejidos, which are weaving products, very beautiful products, and some more wooden products that all represent different aspects of Mapuche culture and each have very significant meanings. And then also gastronomy. The food is amazing. I had sopapillas almost every day, and it was incredible. I also got to try to learn about different native plants and just try so many rich foods while I was visiting the Mapuche people, and it was just an incredible experience. And then finally, agriculture is a very important part of the lives of the entrepreneurs I visited. Almost every single entrepreneur I had visited had livestock or had different plants or crops that they were growing. Here you can see some photos of some Mapuche entrepreneurs selling their goods. This is in Coñaripe, and you can see like honey and like plants and crops. So this is a very important aspect of their lives. Okay, so to conduct my research, I utilized a mixed method approach. First, I conducted interviews with Mapuche entrepreneurs in the Araucanía region. And I was super fortunate to have Professor Reid introduce me to various entrepreneurs, including Javier, who's the director of the Mapuche Tourism Society, and he helped me expand the network I had developed more in Licanray area. And working together with the entrepreneurs of the Mapuche Tourism Society was very vital in helping me understand Mapuche tourism in an environment where there isn't as much like natural tourism attractions like lakes or volcanoes, and the pure attraction is really the culture of the Mapuche people. And here are just some of the photos of entrepreneurs I interviewed. It was really special to be able to connect with so many diverse entrepreneurs in Mapuche tourism. And while interviewing the entrepreneurs, I engaged with several communities across 9 communes in the region. And it was just such a special experience. So that's the first part of my methodology. And the second part of my methodology is utilizing the PRIATI data. PRIATI is a government-supported initiative that focuses on indigenous tourism data collection in Chile. And the survey that I used was the 2025 version, which is the 3rd annual survey collected from over 400 indigenous tourism entrepreneurs across Chile. And all participants self-selected to volunteer their information for the survey in response to the invitation shown on the right. And among the surveyed entrepreneurs, 20.5% of them, or 69 entrepreneurs, are Mapuche and based in the Araucanía. So I thought this was a really good opportunity to kind of compare the data and the interviews and see if there were any differences or similarities. So the following metrics I use are based on these 69 Mapuche entrepreneurs surveyed in the Araucanía region in 2025. So what are some of the trends that I found? First, notably, most entrepreneurs who were surveyed were female. You can see that there's about 73%, 74% of the entrepreneurs that were interviewed were women. And this also held true in my personal experience. Interviewing, I mostly interviewed female entrepreneurs. And in addition, the majority of Mapuche tourism entrepreneurs have received high levels of education, including university degrees or higher level vocational training degrees. And I want to highlight a story. This is the story of Luisa. And throughout Luisa's life, she encountered several challenges, but she describes how throughout her life, weaving was a constant for her and empowered her to face each challenge, including providing an education for each of her children after being a widow. And that was a really difficult experience for her, but weaving is what empowered her to keep going and be resilient. Next, another trend I found was regarding the distribution of tourist services offered. We can see that many entrepreneurs offer multiple services, with some offering more than 8 services at a time, according to the PRIATI data set. And if you look at this data, you can see that there are 19 entrepreneurs that offer 1 service, but that means that 50 entrepreneurs offer 2 or more touristic service. So that's a really interesting aspect of Mapuche tourism entrepreneurs. Another trend I'd like to highlight is income resilience. So in this data, you can see that tourism is the primary income source for many entrepreneurs, but it's also clear that it's not the only source of income. And during tourism off seasons, just to give some context, the tourism season is usually just for about 3-ish months, but the rest of the year is considered the off season. And during the off season, many of these entrepreneurs shift to other industries like agriculture to continue generating their income. And in addition, many entrepreneurs that I met were very self-sufficient and were tending to their own crops and livestock while doing their tourism entrepreneurial activities. Okay, and I'd like to now highlight part of an interview I did with Pedro, who is a Mapuche artist, but also he tends crops and he makes honey. This is him with his bees, and he's kind of showing how the process of making honey and tending to his bees. It's very inspiring to see the diversity of Pedro and other entrepreneurs. like he'll be an artist, but he's also so many other things at the same time. So Pedro describes, in the Mapuche world, everything works in a circular way. Everything is connected. We try to be self-sustaining and not dependent on an external entity like the government. We seek to produce and sustain ourselves autonomously, both economically and mentally. We produce several things. We have grass, lamb, chickens, bees. We also grow oats and wheat. So he kind of just goes on about the different ways that he has diversified his income. And most importantly, you can see that there's this importance of land and taking care of the land. So I thought that was a really special part of the interview to highlight. Moving forward, this is kind of an overview of the institutional funding sources that Mapuche entrepreneurs use. Many receive funding from different government institutions, including Serotec. Serotec, as you can see, is the most used fund among those surveyed. And to highlight the impact of these funds, I will show the experience of Elizabeth, who makes silver jewelry. And she says, public services, to be very honest, have supported me quite a bit. I've applied for public funding, and they've awarded me a couple of projects. The last one was a Serotec project, which allowed me to expand this workshop. And it allowed me to expand it, buy machinery, acquire raw materials, and also work on marketing, boxes, bags, packaging, business cards, things that are very necessary. So it's very clear that these funds are very valuable for the Mapuche tourism entrepreneurs. Okay, so the final section of my presentation is challenges and opportunities. So the first challenge I'd like to highlight is related to the point I just brought up, how there is a lot of dependence on institutional funds. And there are a variety of funds that are available to the entrepreneurs, but in my opinion, as a student, I think one important thing to think about is what happens when like maybe those funds don't exist anymore. Like how do the entrepreneurs continue going forward? So one opportunity that I've identified is creating an alternative means of funding that will open up more opportunities for successful entrepreneurship. For example, a microloan program could provide small, low-interest loans to encourage financial sustainability and build long-term credit histories. Another challenge that I wanted to highlight is the challenge of preserving the land. So pictured here is Orlando, and the challenge that Orlando highlights is that indigenous communities like the Mapuche communities are experiencing increasing pressure from private development and real estate interests. And it's really important to understand this perspective. Orlando highlights that the lack of oversight and the eagerness to utilize the land's natural resources creates water scarcity, restricted access to traditional spaces, and ongoing land disputes that threaten ancestral territories and cultural practices. So this is a really important challenge to highlight, that there still are tensions between the Mapuche community and more commercial interests. And one opportunity that this creates is, oh, sorry, before I go over that, I wanted to kind of highlight what Orlando was describing. So here you can see a map of the territory that once belonged to his grandfather. And this is in direct conflict with the real estate that's developing along the Lake Calafquén. And you can see that he has like the land title to it, but there is a clear tension and misunderstanding between the two, where they haven't reached a full agreement of where exactly do they draw the line. And I think this is a really important example of how there still are many situations like these that we need to keep in mind when the development of tourism and development of Mapuche tourism is happening. So one opportunity that I'd like to highlight is the creation of community dialogue. Ideally, people who live on the land should have a say in how it is utilized, and the opportunity here is to create a municipal or regional roundtables where Mapuche communities, local governments and businesses can discuss land use, tourism projects, and real estate developments on a frequent basis. And hopefully, through more frequent contact, they can develop more dialogue and mutual trust and understanding. And speaking of mutual trust and understanding, one way that the Mapuche Tourism Society is sort of approaching this problem is through inviting others outside the Mapuche community to learn more about the culture and understand. So one initiative right now that I've been helping them work with is Dia de la Gastronomía, which is this day where the Mapuche community kind of shares the different foods of the Mapuche culture, as well as different art products and other amazing goods and services they have, to invite people and create more of a stronger bridge of communication. And in addition, I wanted to kind of highlight one of the groups that I worked with. This is a women's group that makes a variety of different artistic products. The majority of the products are like more tejidos, weaving. But the interesting thing about this is that there are both people from the Mapuche community and the non-Mapuche community. And it's really incredible to see such a strong bond between them and strong collaboration. And I think this is a really amazing model to follow in other sorts of collaborations going forward as Mapuche tourism develops. Okay, and then another challenge I wanted to highlight is increasing revenue. As Javier discusses in his interview, entrepreneurs are averaging roughly about $1,000 USD per month, with many entrepreneurs averaging $500 or less. And in Chile, $1,000 per month is not a lot of money. A daily commute between Villarrica and Temuco by bus is like $8 a day. So that's like roughly 20% of a $1,000 monthly income. And one opportunity for increasing income is by creating more integrated tourism offers. This is Javier's idea. He hopes to combine entrepreneurial offerings together and create more value that helps increase revenue. So one example is a comprehensive one-week program that can bring together tourism from many different aspects of Mapuche tourism, like arts, lodging, food, and cultural education. And these programs would naturally command higher prices and drive higher revenues. Some more examples of what this could look like. This is Jessica again, and one idea that she has is building an artist residency to invite people who want to learn how to do ceramics to come and stay in her cabins, and every day learn different aspects of ceramics. And then below is another weaving cooperative that I worked with, and they're hoping to create a weekend immersion experience by teaching tourists how to make their own products, and then they can bring one home at the end of the experience. And then finally, I wanted to highlight the challenge of gaps in support services. I think that there are so many strong entrepreneurs and businesses in the Mapuche tourism field, but I've noticed that there are some gaps in supporting services that we need to consider as Mapuche tourism grows. So one opportunity is to expand the value chain with support services. For example, we could have community-run shuttle vans or taxis, maybe horse rentals for very short distances, and Spanish Mapuzungun interpretation for international visitors. In a lot of my discussions with the entrepreneurs, they mentioned, oh, how about we invite people from China to come over? But the gap here is that we need a translator to sort of connect the two, the tourists and the tourism entrepreneurs, because of that language barrier. And then finally, once we do have those services, we could prioritize international digital promotion, social media marketing in multiple languages, and establishing a stronger digital presence through websites of these programs. And that is my presentation. Thank you so much. I wanted to also, I'm not sure if he's here right now, but Javier, was going to speak at this moment.
Sí, por acá
Oh,
estamos.
awesome. Hola, Javier. Javier is the director of the Mapuche Tourism Society. And I had such a pleasure. It was such a pleasure to work with Javier. He introduced me to so many entrepreneurs in the region. And I'm excited to hear your remarks, Javier.
Sí, quiero leer algo en inglés. I don't speak English, pero quiero igual hablar algo, ¿ya? Así que, good morning, everyone. My name is Javier Lefiman, Executive Director of the Mapuche Tourism Society. I'm joined by the president and other member of our organization. Our members are from the sea to the Andes mountain. We seek a balance between culture and business. I want to express my gratitude to Mikayla for her collaboration with our Mapuche tourism entrepreneurs. Through the creation of audiovisual material, she guided us toward an international market vision. It was also a great experience for us, and we would like you to continue sending students from your university to our territory. Our organization can welcome them and show them our culture richness, our past, present, and future. Perhaps we could sign a collaboration agreement to continue welcoming students. Thank you very much, Mikayla, our ambassador, and many thanks to Columbia University. Eso quise decirlo un poco en inglés, no sé si se entendió algo, pero un poco por esto de la interculturalidad, de poder igual mostrar nuestro interés también a conocer otras culturas, ¿ya? No solo nosotros somos importantes, sino también las demás culturas. Así que un poco en ese sentido va esto. Bueno, quiero reforzar el agradecimiento hacia Mikayla. Creo que Andrés también lo decía. Mikayla es una mujer muy colaborativa, siempre dispuesta, hasta, o sea, incluso ella misma nos presionaba para que le entregáramos información y poder desarrollar rápido su trabajo. Así que igual nos vino a hacer correr un poco, ¿ya? Así que muy bien, pero la experiencia fue muy gratificante. Y eso, así que esperamos tenerla a ella en particular. En otro momento conocimos igual a su esposo, así que también un día pudimos tener una reunión más familiar ahí. Así que, y además reforzar esta idea de seguir en esto de la cooperación. Mikayla lo decía, tenemos muchas brechas todavía, eh, y ahí necesitamos ayuda. Y si las universidades y si universidades extranjeras pueden aportarnos en eso, y en particular la Universidad de Columbia, más adelante nosotros felices con recibir a estudiantes y colocarnos a disposición para que nos apoyen y, bueno, y al mismo tiempo pueden hacer sus trabajos de investigación. Eso, muchas gracias Chris, no he conversado contigo, pero me parece una persona muy simpática, así que un gusto igual. Ahí nos vemos.
Thank you so much, Javier, and congratulations on your English. It was perfectly understood. Very, very well pronounced. Congratulations. I imagine that must have been some work on your part, so congratulations on that too. Thank you for reaching out to the international community. Thank you too, Mikayla, for your presentation and your words. It's a fantastic presentation, which really spoke to the fantastic work that you did with the communities in and around Villarrica. Thanks to Andrés as well for guiding you on this. I was wondering if anybody had any questions. Again, we can go into the question and answer button on the bottom of your screen. In the meantime, we did have a couple of comments from people who were commenting from the public, and we have one from Margot Agustin. She's saying, sending her cariños from Rancho Don Agustin, the indigenous community of Coihue Painemal. And Elizabeth Painemal also just wanted to write to say thank you to you, Mikayla, for all of your work and you helped out with the organization. So I see that the community is very grateful for the work that you did. Thank you for that. In the meantime, if there's any questions and Q&As in the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. Diego Flores has a question here. It says, thanks, Mikayla, for your presentation. Did you have the chance to dig into the role that the play of national parks and reserves as a social economic multiplier factor in Araucanía to improve human welfare as an inclusive and pertinent tourism development of Mapuche people? Kind of a long question, but did you get the question there?
I think so. Yeah, thank you so much again, for everyone, and thank you, Chris. Thank you, Diego, for your question, and thank you again to the Mapuche Tourism Society for the amazing collaboration. And thank you, Javier. So, Diego, that's a really good question. I actually did not have a chance to really research the role that the national parks play as reserves, but you mentioned the word socioeconomic multiplier factor. Is that what the word was? To improve human welfare. And I think the role of tourism as a tool to improve human welfare is something that I've been thinking about a lot. And how do you sort of reach that stage of multiplying the socioeconomic welfare? I think at this stage of Mapuche tourism, right now it's more of an individual basis. It's more at the micro level. So I do see that the Mapuche tourism entrepreneurs themselves are reaping a lot of socioeconomic benefits if their ventures are successful. The role of more national entities, I think, for me, the scope is more toward like funding, like Serotech and those other funds. So unfortunately, I did not get to research the role of national parks, but thank you for your question.
Thank you. I have a question for you. I was speaking to a tourism expert just about a month ago, and he made a very interesting observation, not necessarily about tourism in the Araucanía region, but tourism in general in Chile. His observation was a lot of the problems that we have in tourism in Chile is that the people who are providing the services often have not experienced tourism themselves. They have maybe not gone to a nice restaurant, or maybe they have not been at a nice hotel. Is this something that you feel would apply to Villarrica as well and the surrounding areas? And how could we address that? Would it be a matter of inviting people who are involved in tourism to actually experience tourism firsthand?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Are you talking about Mapuche tourism specifically, or general tourism in Villarrica?
Yeah, I would say, since we're talking about Mapuche tourism, I'd say we can talk about that.
Yeah, I would say for me, I think what makes Mapuche tourism very distinct is their ability to connect with people so deeply, even if it's just been like a few minutes or an hour. Like, you really feel how authentic the experience is with Mapuche tourism. I was able to contrast that with kind of more general tourism in Villarrica and like Pucón. I would say like the difference is that, yeah, the people that are, or just generally, the kind of like souvenirs or experiences you have as a general tourist, they don't really feel as personal, and you don't learn as much. Like, you don't feel like you're growing as a person because you experienced that general tourism. Um, that would be my take on it. But of course, like, if you are immersed in like the beauty of nature, that could be a beautiful experience itself. But in terms of like the products and services that the Mapuche tourism entrepreneurs were offering, I really felt it was very thoughtful, and you just felt special being there and being a part of their lives.
Thank you for that. And previously, when we were talking with Olivia, I asked her about like a typical day in Villarrica. I'm going to change it a little bit. I'm going to keep the personal focus though. What would you say was your absolute best day during your experience in Villarrica?
That is such a great question. I think I think there are so many different options for what the best day would be, but one of my most memorable days was seeing about 4 different entrepreneurs in the span of 24 hours, and they were kind of all across the region. So I rode a lot of bus that day. But so that day I went to Nueva Imperial and visited a few entrepreneurs there. And I stayed overnight at Margot's place. That day I met Elizabeth, Alvaro, and Margot. And I was able to stay in Margot's cabin and to kind of see what it was like for her to live on her land. And she told me about her family history and the importance of her father and how he inspired her to start her own business. I also met her son, Augustine, which the business is named after. And Augustine was such an incredible host. He made me popcorn, and he also talked to me a lot. And I feel like that experience really encapsulates why Mapuche tourism is so special, and why more people should engage in it. And then the day after, I rode the bus back to Temuco and went to Maria Christina's place, where she has a ruca, and she made me lunch, and we chatted a lot about her own personal story of how she, at a very young age, um, decided to be a nanny after her mom passed away. So she spent several decades in Santiago, and she just described how her losing like the experience of being on the land and not being able to speak Mapuzungun and retain like the culture to the full extent she wanted to during her time in Santiago, how difficult it was for her. But then returning back, she was so grateful to be able to start her own tourism venture and basically like live the principles that her grandfather and her family had taught her. And it made me realize like how profound Mapuche culture is for the people, and it's such a special experience to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, Mikayla. I'm going to do another question too to go on more the professional side. And I have a little bit more insight on your past because of your application. So I wanted to ask you about a little bit about your past experiences. You've been addressing issues of inequality in San Francisco, New York, even in Uganda. And you've also done some research on tourism issues in Thailand, in Cambodia, and Vietnam. How would you say that these compare and contrast to the experience that you had in Chile?
Thank you. That's such a great question. So I kind of came into this experience trying to identify what is the inequality here, because I just came in thinking that like there's probably an inequality that exists. And I think when I was going over the history of the Mapuche people, you can already see that inequality from the very beginning. And that's really important to consider because this is a context in which tourism is serving as this tool to sort of like elevate the Mapuche people and really like put them at a position where they can have a stronger economic standing and political standing, have a stronger voice in the region and in the country as a whole. And I think right now, a lot of the entrepreneurs that I was able to speak to, they have received funding from the state and they've been very satisfied with the funding. It's made a huge difference. And I think where the real inequality is the commercial and economic interests. I highlighted a little bit of Orlando's story. I also worked with Nicanor, who's another entrepreneur, who's very passionate about conserving and protecting the land. And what's interesting is that general tourism is what's sort of harming the land with like all the boats and pollution of like the lakes and trash everywhere. And that is a huge threat, just like from my perspective to protecting the land. And it's like everything that's like against the Mapuche culture. So I think that's like inequality. General tourism itself presents this inequality of like land conflict. So a lot of when I was driving through on the buses to different places, you can kind of see a little bit of how there are some forestry companies that are kind of just cutting down trees, but also growing trees takes water and that destroys land too. So I think it's really important to consider like, how do we respect the land of the Mapuche while also trying to elevate their economic standing. The other experiences I had in tourism outside of Chile, I feel like we're more about sort of ensuring that they don't become dependent on tourism as their sole income source. But you can see from my presentation that it's kind of the opposite with the Mapuche tourism, how they've already diversified and they have several different ways to ensure that they're resilient in the case of like COVID, for example. But when I was in Cambodia, for example, a lot of the people were telling me how all of a sudden their income just went to zero when tourists stopped showing up. And I think that's like one of the huge differences and a really important thing to consider when thinking about how do we ensure more resilience and economic inequality.
Fantastic, thank you. We have a question here from Laura Luna. Thank you, Laura, for your interesting and very pertinent questions. Laura says, thank you for such a great presentation. Javier Lefiman mentioned the cultural exchange that they also experienced by having you doing research with them. Did you feel that too? Can you tell something about the intercultural dialogue that you experienced?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you for your question, Laura. So I think one thing that comes to mind is a lot of people ask me about my cultural heritage, like, are you actually American? Because you don't look American. And I always told them about how about my family history and how it was really important to my identity. And I think one of the best examples of cultural exchange was actually going to Javier's house and meeting his family and Javier's brother, Pedro, who I highlighted. He was like an ambassador for Mapuche culture. He played musical instruments for me. He taught me how to play Mapuche hockey, the Mapuche version of hockey. I was able to see all the farm animals and eat an amazing meal with them. And he asked me a lot of questions too about like language, like how do I keep up language when living in America? And he asked me how to say things in Chinese. So I taught a few people Chinese while I was there. And I think a lot of our conversations kind of centered on how do we preserve the importance of our own culture while the rest of our environment is constantly changing and adapting to new trends. So I really valued that aspect. I also shared some foods that were more Asian too, so it was kind of fun to exchange those experiences.
Thank you so much, Mikayla. We don't have any other questions, so we'll put an end to this webinar. I would like to thank everybody who has participated. Thanks particularly to Mikayla and Olivia for their presentations, their insights. Thanks, Andres and Alfredo, for your guidance and for participating as well. Javier, it is wonderful to meet you, and I have had a little bit of experience in Palin. I hope one day to be able to come down to Villarrica and hit the ball around a bit with you. I'm not an expert, but I enjoy playing. So it is a pleasure to meet you, and it was a pleasure to have everybody here. Thank you so much. I would invite everybody to follow us. We are Columbia Global Center Santiago. You can look us up on the internet. We have our own website, as well as all the social media, and we're on YouTube as well. This video will be edited and then put up on YouTube shortly. Thank you so much.
Bienvenido.